Hello and welcome to the Red Piranha Knowledge Sprint series. In this presentation, we'll be taking a look at threat hunting techniques, but before we begin, I'd like to introduce myself and the rest of the team that'll be joining us. I'm Ben Aylett, the Product Manager for Red Piranha, and I'll be joined by Adam Bennett, our CEO, who'll say a few words, and then we'll be handing over to Damien Peters, our Security Lead, as we get into the technical discussion and demonstration. We also have George Bullis, our General Manager of Sales, on hand, along with Raya and Rosalind from our Customer Service team, handling things behind the scenes. Now, you'll notice that the platform we're using for this live event has a chat window. So if you have any comments or questions, you feel free to use it. And on the subject of questions, we'll have a segment at the end of the presentation where we'll take a few minutes to answer them. You should also note that there are some PDFs and you're welcome to download them. So you'll find them in the handout section and you're welcome to review that later. And so feel free to take advantage of that. Now, with that out of our way, a little about Red Piranha. We're an Australian-owned and based cybersecurity business offering TDIR, DAS, Secure Edge, which is our SASE variant of Crystal Eye, and we are also proud members of the Defence Industry Security Program and Intel Network Builder Partners. It seems the slides jumped on me. So Red Piranha is an award-winning innovator in the field of cybersecurity and proudly the first Cyber Threat Alliance member in the APAC region. And as you can see by the train of logos at the bottom of this slide, we are Australian-made CREST-certified IOSF members with compliance certification in ISO 27001 and 9001. Now, if you have a look at the map, you'll notice that there's a lot of markers there. They're showing our global POP network, which is expanding continually, and we expect to have complete coverage on every continent in the coming months. Next slide. Thank you. Now, before I hand over to Adam, a few more points about Red Piranha. We were founded in 2015 out of Adam's frustration that good cybersecurity was only available to the organizations that could afford to run their own specialist departments. Through leveraging automation and process, we're bringing outcomes-driven risk management and cybersecurity to business operations of all sizes and industry verticals. This has given rise to the Crystal Eye cybersecurity platform, which was launched in 2018, and is an expansive tool set delivered via the Crystal Eye security appliance and the Red Piranha Orchestrate portal. As mentioned before, we have various certifications and partnerships that demonstrate our commitment to our mission. Our SOC as a service product is our own SOC platform that we can make available to subscribers, allowing them to manage their own SOC operations while also retaining access to our experienced security team for escalation and instant response. At this time, I'd like to hand over to Adam, who will take you through the next few slides.
Thanks, Ben. Adam. Thanks for that intro about Red Piranha, and thanks for coming along, everyone. Today we've got a great session. For the people that don't know what we do here each month, we have our partner events and product events and things like that. We have a monthly technical session where we, I suppose, focus a little bit more on the nitty-gritties. When it comes to threat hunting and detection engineering, it is all about a little bit less pretty and a little bit more nitty-gritty, if you want to put it into a little phrase. Great to have George and Damien along. Like I said, Damien will be taking us through some of our, I suppose, some of those detection hypotheses that we'll go through, sort of looking at some of the brute force detection from lateral movement, internal to internal. We'll be looking at some, some protections around defensive SWG, how that policy can really define your detection efficacy. Some lateral movement detection with Mimikatz, detecting that pivoting, but also detecting things like Cobalt Strike and the C2 frameworks as well. But before we get into that, a little bit more about our security journeys, I suppose, and how we deal with it at Red Piranha. These are the 7 pillars, as I like to call them, when we're talking to our team and how we deal with security. And, whether it's detection engineering or any part of cybersecurity, you really want to start with your strategic outlook, your strategic policy management. And that's whether it's in the governance, your total ISMS, your information security management system, but even down to your detection engineering. Detection engineering, is a really deep subject. There's a lot to cover, and it's not as simple as just looking at a MITRE ATT&CK framework and saying, I have these things covered. So really using policy to define your detection efficacy is a key part of that. And when you start blocking things, when you start putting these things into play, it really is important to make sure your team is trained on these things. Cybersecurity awareness training, for example, isn't just about teaching people not to click on phishing links. It's also about teaching people about what their expectations are or their user requirements are when they're using your company or organization's technology. That acceptable use policy, for example, tying that into your detection strategy is really important because it is how you get to map out and identify risks within your network. Without it, you're pretty much just setting up to fail. That old approach of trying to log everything and then stick it into a SIM, and hopefully some magic SIM platform is going to show you every attack. It hasn't worked for 20 years, and it's not going to work going forward, particularly as our stacks get harder. And once we've kind of trained the staff on those things, really locking things down. So, that's part 3, talking about zero trust, making sure that we segment correctly. You can get a lot more detection efficacy if you're segmenting correctly. I'll talk more about that as we go forward. So we're looking to detect all the things, right? So first we need to understand the threats. We need to understand there's gaps in our detection strategies. During COVID, we saw a massive uptick in purchasing or uplift around endpoint protections. And if you went and asked the CEO of Sophos back at the time, as one of the premier endpoint protections in 2015, what their detection capability was through EDR at the time, he would have said 15%. If you asked the security engineer at the time, they were saying 5%. So if we look at 10%, the pendulum was really swinging towards EDR bypass. We saw a massive uplift in spend in EDR and improvements in that technology, but that pendulum has really swung back now, and we're seeing a lot more capable attackers and a lot more bypass in the stacks. And of course, our stacks have got more complicated where we put our data as well, protecting that data. So that's where understanding that zero trust and that segmentation and how you set up your sensors and your policy, right, to really improve your detection strategy, your monitoring strategy. And things like IEC 62433, we have a product which we won't be going through today. If we went through all the features of Crystalline, for example, today, it'd take us 4 hours, minimum. So we're just focusing on the detection part, but DAS is a good example of that, a declarative authorization service where you can now run microservice management in Crystalline as well. And actually put detection on API controls, which is really important. Things like passive encryption control, so you can actually protect and detect around OT. And again, we talked about using policy. Well, setting up honeypots, for example. We won't be going through that today, but Crystalline has the ability also to set up honeypots in multiple parts of your environment, to get high efficacy around detection on file movements and things like that. If we look at why, though, why is it? Why do we need to care? And that I sort of touched on a little while ago. I've seen geopolitical instability go through the roof, of course. Everybody's quite aware of the news that's happening at the moment. The cyber attacks have, gone through the roof there. More APTs, advanced persistent threats, means more sophisticated attackers attacking people. And of course, their sophistication means a higher skill set. But we've also seen ransomware groups over the last 10 years. They're in business 10 years now. So those financially motivated attackers have teamed up with state-sponsored attackers, but also generally when you've been in business for 10 years, your business skill set increases. So we've seen the sophistication increase in those financially motivated attackers as well. And this has led to a really high increase in EDR bypass and the different forms and motivations that our attackers use. And that is espionage. We see at the moment, a lot of espionage. Red Piranha, we work a lot with defence contractors, with the Department of Defence, for example, where we are essentially helping those contractors who are high-value targets for APTs. So they need more assurance when it comes to that detection capability because the sophistication in evasion is a lot higher. Hacktivism's changed a lot over the last few years as well. We've seen hacktivism tied into state-sponsored groups linked to geopolitical changes, and there's a lot of them right now. And of course, you see sabotage. We've seen this happen in the US, but right now this is happening in the Middle East as we speak, as the war has been going for 12 days. I think Trump summed it up as the 12-day war. I think that's a thing now. And of course, as I said, those ransomware groups that are financially motivated, that sophistication has really grown. So where do we start? Where do we start to actually start to look at this? Well, we call this pyramid the pyramid of pain, right? Now, one of the ways we get extra, I suppose, contextualization, where we start to turn information into actual intelligence, is through threat intelligence itself. But it's not just enough to buy a threat intelligence feed. That's one thing. You can buy a feed off anyone. In fact, 15 years ago, intelligence, for the IOCs were pretty much given away and shared a lot as that became commoditized. Companies started to sell these feeds, but it needs to be in your stack so we can link those multiple IOCs to actual actions that are happening in your environment. And this is a more tricky thing to do than people realize when they buy a threat feed. And if we look at these IOCs or these indicators, we start at the bottom there and we say, well, hash values, right? Why are hash values at the bottom? Well, while there can be very significant detection, and EDRs use hash values, for example, Yarra rules are the predominant main hash value rule here that is used to detect malware. There's other things, of course, EDRs do, but it's because it's not very painful for an attacker to change hash values. Okay, so that's why it's at the bottom of the period there. IP addresses, the same. We know it's easy to get. In Red Piranha, we have both hash values. We have Yarra rule detection in Crystal Eye, for example. We also have AAI, automatic actionable intelligence, which is a really highly rotated IP set of IP addresses based off our threat intelligence detection. Anyone who knows Red Piranha knows we publish that threat intelligence weekly, as well as for you to track indicators. But again, it's very easy for threat actors to change those IP or the infrastructure they use and then rotate those IP addresses. It's a little bit harder, to do, but than say hashes, but it's still easy to do. And the same with domain names, right? It's reasonably simple for attackers to essentially change out domain names during campaigns and register new domain names and things like that. Now we start getting into network host artifacts, right? Which starts to get a little bit annoying because it's a little bit harder. And then, of course, tools, the type of tool sets that attackers are using, and, of course, the overall TTPs, which is when we start really mixing these things together. And that's when we start to get detection efficacy. So in your stack, you need to be pretty much dealing with all these IOCs to get a good detection program or detection engineering program going. Of course, Crystal Eye, we have this defense in depth as well, and we're able to see things like JA3 fingerprints, other fingerprints, SNI, and a whole bunch of other. And, of course, we're feeding this threat intelligence into the stack, so there's automatic actionable intelligence in our customers' networks. If we look at EDR bypass, excuse me, we'll have a sip of my coffee. We look at EDR bypass and some of the techniques used and are becoming more and more common, and that's things like reflective DLL loading. They're able to bypass processes, direct syscalls, unhooking as well. Things are becoming quite trivial. There's a lot of tool sets out there now for unsophisticated hackers to use too when it comes towards actually EDR bypass. So there's also other techniques which can defeat EDR alone as your detection strategy. And that is, I was talking to someone recently where a camera system was attacked. And of course, that camera system can then be used to pivot laterally within a network and look for other assets which might not have EDR bypass. If you ask me in my business, personally, what makes me not sleep at night? It's a system that doesn't have EDR on it, right? Which is why we need to have other detection technologies around. And then, of course, there's frameworks, C2 frameworks like Cobalt Strike, where reconnaissance, covert communications, collaboration, attack packages, post-exploitation capabilities, browser pivoting and all different types of tech tools for the attack team can be used that bypass EDR as well, multiple in different stages of the attack stream at the same time. So we'll be focusing a little bit on that today, how we detect these things. And of course, Cobalt Strike's just one of the more popular ones. I was reading a thread actually, I think a couple of days ago, and people were debating about which was the most popular at the moment. Cobalt Strike's probably still the most popular, but we're seeing frameworks for these type of frameworks, new frameworks coming out every month now. There's new ones out there all the time. If we look at some of that infrastructure, it's a very simple diagram here. We're not talking about complexity. Obviously, our stacks are a lot more complex generally working, but you'll see here that call out, how it's working towards that infrastructure that can and will be rotated. So the attackers sit behind these infrastructures that they build out to then be able to maintain and manage persistence in networks and essentially send the commands also back. And this can often sit in many different areas and many different ways. We've seen Twitter being used, we've seen Telegram being used for comms, we've seen all sorts of weird, wonderful and collaborative ways for this to happen. But it just means we're playing a bit of a game of whack-a-mole too in the industry. We close down some redirector or infrastructure, and of course that infrastructure can be popped back up. In fact, we were tracking one last night that was trying to phishing me personally, and it got tracked back to Ukrainian servers, and they don't look that sophisticated because they're just using Maldev tool sets just repurposed for doing some spear phishing on Red Piranha. But the important bit for us is to have that pyramid of pain, if you can understand that, deployed, I suppose, in the control plane and in the way of this type of activity, which gives you a lot of assurance there in early detection, which of course stops loss and risk. This is where network detection can come in. If that EDR is bypassed, what are you going to do? We need to have essentially a way for, if we get an indicator for an endpoint, for us to then be able to correlate back between cloud, network, and then if we get an indicator from network, to be able to correlate back to endpoint and cloud, and vice versa all the way around. But you'll see in the blue there, we have some points, being able to maintain or track CNCs, and at Red Piranha, we maintain that, we track and detect all known malware families and known CNC call outs. And that's predominantly through our partnerships, but also the hard work we do as threat detectors. Okay, as Ben said, we're the first company in the APAC region to be invited and then accepted into the Cyber Threat Alliance based out of Washington. And we currently, as a membership consortium, share our intel, and this gives us a great amount of access. And I'm glad this is happening in the industry these days, because 10 years ago, Bank A would get hacked and Bank B would get hacked by the same attackers. And what we're able to do through this integrated intelligence and sharing functionality is really increase that detection and know what's happening in the industry from an intelligence point of view. If we look at some of the things we're going to be talking today in the demonstration, for example, lateral movement. We're going to be showing a few protection mechanisms on how we can actually stop attacks, sure, but there will always be the ones that get through. And after an initial hook is made, or a person, submits credentials or gets phished, we need to be getting that second stage, essentially. We need to be able to detect the lateral movement. And this can really greatly reduce the loss. Just because you get hacked, and people will get hacked, we cannot stop all the hacks. What we need to be stopping, and this is where a good detection and response program, TDIR program, comes in. What we need to be doing is stopping the hack costing us money, right? So what we can do here is an early detection is respond efficiently with good tool sets, people, process, and technology, and stop access or exfiltration to sensitive information, and even not hack back, but even then do research up to, like we did yesterday in Red Piranha, up to the infrastructure layer, and really understand the attackers and shut them down. So how does this work? The main goal of an attacker really is to find and steal and to destroy that sensitive information. We see a lot more cases now of exfiltration over encryption, or sometimes they're even bypassing the encryption process and just moving straight into the exfiltration, right? And essentially what we need to be doing is making sure that these attackers aren't staying undetected in networks. And I think of a horrible case recently with ANU in Canberra, where the attackers were said to be up in there for up to 19 years. We see dwell time still a major factor. So we need to be removing that dwell time. And of course, then we stop that loss and risk. And if attackers are detected once that phish has been done, even if it's not blocked, well, we can do something about it early. And of course, we don't get any loss and risk from the attack, and we can close these out. And we don't give attackers a chance to live off the land, as they say. Living off the land attacks are utilizing tool sets which are already in situ in the business and make them very hard to detect. So having a good TDIR program allows for that. And the other thing is, we've increased this complexity in stacks so much more. I talked before about how we have our declarative authorization service, policy control or policy enforcement through microservices in Crystalline. It's important to set those structures up in these type of cloud environments. We can make sure authorization is happening everywhere. We can also solve the problem where infrastructure teams have been giving asset management over to DevOps or dev teams, right? This is kind of crazy because a DevOps or a dev team is looking to get or stand product up quickly, which is great. That's their job. Red Piranha builds product too, so I know this problem well, okay? But what we need to be doing is making sure that somebody is accountable for asset management in the organization, and giving this policy management that we have gives control back to the infrastructure teams, where it doesn't then hinder the development teams to be working and hinder their speed in development. But we can still get that control. But the benefit from that, having that type of system in play, microservice management, is we now get detection out of the box. So we're able to bring that into our SOC program, and Red Piranha runs the SOC program, of course, for our customers as well through an MDR service, which doesn't just include detection, it also includes things like vulnerability management and CTEM and things like that. But by having this type of technology or rollout in play, you also get that immediate detection. And of course, what was all this meant to do? All this is meant to do is reducing that dwell time. We still see some 18 months of average dwell time, but that's where the loss and risk really come into play. So I'll hand you over now to Damien. He's going to share his screen. And we're going to go through a couple of these hypotheses and why hypotheses should drive threat hunting. And that is, what you want to do is deal with either proactive or reactive threat hunting. And what we want to be doing is essentially if we're doing proactive threat hunting, so that is measuring our detection system and improving it all the time, is Damien's setting up his screen there. I'll just run you through what we're going to be showing, I suppose. But we want to be using proactive threat hunting as a way to make sure our reactive is going to work when we need it to work. And that can be done through a SOC program like Damien's sharing right here through our CSOC software. And I'll let you talk you through, I think he's going to start off with some initial attack pattern and then detection of lateral movement. And then we'll move through some of the other scenarios. Hand it over to you, Damien.
Yep, thanks for that, Adam. So yeah, as Adam mentioned, begin with like the initial attack vector. So this is CSOC, our internal SOC, built from the ground up for integration with the Crystal Eye itself as well. We've had a ticket escalated to us from a Crystal Eye. We can see it's an attempted user gain. The client or whoever it could be noticed an event, it looks suspicious, and then they escalated it to us to investigate. They can do it themselves, but they do have that on-demand threat hunting available as well. And we can see from the description, it's a brute force detected. But since it's one event, we need to be able to investigate on the Crystal Eye to verify. Because if it's brute force, it will be occurring multiple times. So
I'll just jump in there too, Damien. And through our SOC program too, this would have been picked up by our managed detection and response. But as Damien said, important thing there, every customer of ours has an incident response retainer. And what we've built Crystal Eye for here is have the people, process, and technology in situ in an organization for us to efficiently do these detection and response programs same day, right out of the box. And I'll tell you more about that later on. But this would have been detected either by an end user utilizing our product or a subscribed SOC customer. And our SOC team would have escalated it back to the end user to then start an immediate or initial investigation to determine whether it's a false positive or in fact, a lateral movement from a post-breach scenario.
Yep. Before we can begin investigation, we need to know what we're working with. It doesn't help you jump straight into investigating the event or the threat. You need to be able to figure out what you're working with. So to begin with, we'll just check the devices on the network by going to the network map, just to get a better idea of what we're working with, what systems are on the network. And so here we have it. It's a simple network. We've got a Windows workstation and a Linux server. So not too complicated. So at least we know that. We've got a brute force event, and we've got 2 devices on the network. To actually dig into the events, you can go to the threat hunt dashboard. The threat hunt dashboard is designed to be used by our threat hunting specialists. It allows you to correlate events between the network, client, and endpoint as well. And as we say, this isn't locked down to just the security professionals. A client can go through here, they can look at things, they can even interact with it. None of this is locked down. If you have a Crystal Eye, you have access to it. So from here, we can see there were about 10,000 threats detected in the last 24 hours. But we also have other things. So we've got the threat hunt dashboard, which allows you to investigate the events in depth. We've got M365 threat hunting for cloud correlation, AI and escalation reports. So that's where our AI machine learning heuristics come in. So, if there's any anomalous activity on the network, you can check there and you can escalate it to us as well for further investigation if you're unsure. And then
Yes,
we've
we
got
have
active
machine
session
learning.
as
I'll
well.
just jump in there and explain that a little bit more. We have machine learning obviously across the platform. I know it's a hot topic at the moment. We've had an AI ops team in Red Piranha for 10 years. Look, I mean, we're always looking at unique, I suppose, yes, creative ways to use machine learning and our smart algorithms to do anomaly detection. The machine learning we have in there at the moment is predominantly around detecting lateral movement. So often around sort of protocols that are used predominantly. The difference between Crystal and other, I suppose, detection mechanisms is we are in the control plane. We are the ones generating events. Unlike a lot of XDR platforms out there that are just log ingestions, log ingestion platforms and pretty dashboards. And like I said before, we need to start as an industry focusing on the nitty gritties, not the pretties. We don't need pretty dashboards. We need, in the event of an investigation, to dig in to the details, and that's something that in this platform we're able to do, being in the control plane, and we generate, I think, some 2 gig of logs per hour off enterprise traffic from users a lot of the time as a standard. So it just tells you how much we're doing, and we'll show you a little bit more of that. Continue on there, Damon.
Yep, thanks, Adam. So if we go to the threat dashboard, we can see there's a lot to look at. But before getting lost in the weeds of things, you could do all the threat hunting on here. We've seen on other platforms where an event comes up, but that's it. It tells you, yep, we detected an exploit happening. You can't actually delve into it. You can't see why it occurred, where it occurred from, without having to change tool sets onto a different platform. So we've integrated that into Crystal because we developed it, so we can add what we want and what the market needs as well. So you can add groups, you can add filters. So here we just have the events for the last 3 days, and we've got the top 5 correlated stats up, and here we can see this was the event that was escalated to our SOC, the Hydra brute force. We can see it occurred roughly about 5,000 times for the specific event. Very easy to investigate. So we've got the source IP that was linked to the Linux server that we saw earlier on the network map. You just right-click, include, and that just adds it to the filter. And now all these events are related to that. And if you scroll down a bit further to the events, you can expand these. And this will give you those details, just talking about the real nitty-gritty that the tech folks like as well as a SOC engineer. The more pristine information you can get, the easier it is to come to a conclusion as well. So from here, we can see it is indeed a Hydra brute force detect alarm. And to verify that, here we can see the user agent Hydra. This is a known IOC for the Hydra toolkit, which is used exclusively for brute forcing. And in this case, we can see it's trying to hit the Windows workstation as well, since that was the Windows workstation IP. So far, we've been able to conclude that there is indeed brute forcing occurring. But what else is occurring? So that's just one vector. The device has already been compromised. Now to see how bad it really is. While looking at the correlated stats, we can also see there's Cobalt strike activity. So if we include that event into the raw SID, we've now correlated that. So if we can expand the events again, here we go. We can see the URI, the URL, very suspicious, definitely not your normal URL, and a host. That could potentially be one of the C2s for the Cobalt, and we can look that further as well if required. So we've been able to confirm that this device is brute forcing and it has a C2 beacon. So it is most definitely compromised. We can no longer trust it. Most people, or most security experts, might suggest that we turn off the device, remove it from the network, and do post-analysis as well. What you can do with the Crystal Eye, you can actually segment it from the network while keeping it on, removing all communications from it out. And that would allow us to leave all that data, all the RAM, which is required, but also allows us to use some other CrystalEye features, such as the vuln scan and the PCAP snap, to really get more details out of it as well.
That's exactly right. If I could just jump in there, I think
Yep.
Gartner's calling that moving target defense. It's one of the benefits of being in the control plane. We can, without destroying forensic evidence, and if anyone's ever done an incident response on a complex network, this is a key element. The right thing to do is not destroy your evidence. We need to be locking down to the original or finding the original attack vector. And that means often having a lot more data. So Red Piranha SOC customers get 18 months out of the box for us, but they can also, go and buy year-on-year extended storage on top of that, which is really important. The ASD in Australia has recently come out and also said 18 months is the minimum you need. So if you've got an XDR platform which is only giving you 30 days, it's kind of useless. We need to be able to drill back down and find the original attack vector, and that means getting assurance back in time. And as Damien said, it's also important for us to be in the control plane, not just a log ingestion platform where we can, yes, with some of the advanced zone-based networking in CrystalEye, keep that device operational and keep it doing what it needs to be doing, but also contain it, virtually contain it. And that allows us to do network-based forensics and get more details from this environment without it being able to do more damage across the rest of the network, and for us to monitor it safely within that environment. So you don't want to pull the plug. You don't want to shut down your VM and kill forensics. We want to actually do the forensics to find out, was there anything else affected? Has this pivoted anywhere? And I'll let Damien go on and show you more how this operates here.
Yep, thank you. So say we've isolated this Linux machine, this compromised host. We can use the PCAP snap feature. This allows you to schedule a PCAP, so a network capture. This will get sent directly to the SOC team for investigation as well. We can change the duration. Say we want to capture every 5 minutes, so you can do daily, weekly, monthly. So let's say we want to capture 10 minutes a day to make sure it's consistent. And that gives us a good baseline to be able to investigate, seeing if there's any other nasties happening on the network as well. But while that's occurring, you can also go to the vulnerability scanning, where we have targeted scans. It's not just, we no longer have to just scan the network, ping every device, ping every IP, trying to figure out the device. The CrystalEye actually knows what the IPs are. So here we have those 2 devices already in the default scan profile. Let's say we just want one. So in this case, we just want the Windows machine. We can just select the Windows workstation and add that. Now we've created a different profile, and we can go to the scan schedule. And then this will allow us to actually scan that. So it's the Windows scan. You get different scan types. So depending on how in-depth you want to go, you select the scan profile. And you can also, similar to the PCAP snap, schedule it. Say you have a compliance requirement to do monthly scans or weekly scans. You can do that. You don't need to constantly set the scans. So it's really useful in that sense as well.
And if I go back there and talk about PCAP snap and why we have that there as well, I mean, this is an important feature for our IR teams when helping customers. The current MO of having a retainer with a security company like us, and we have a lot of companies that come to us and want a retainer, and that's fantastic. But what do? You get a phone call with us. You don't get any real incident response capability. What we're proposing and what we give to our customers is every customer has a retainer regardless. It's all on call, all on demand. We call that human machine teaming, where we link our SOC teams in with our customers' networks. And these tool sets are designed for us to do IRs efficiently. And so PCAP snap is essentially what in the old days I'd have to come in. First of all, I have to get my my engagement contracts done. If I was called in to do network forensics in a war room for a breach, I would have to get the engagement contracts done. And anyone who done any incident response engagement contracts or any type of security engagement contract, they take a week or 2, right, before those type of access control requirements are sorted out. I then got to carry in my black box into the network environment, whether it be a data center or on premise. I've got to plug in. I've then got to tap into that network, suck all that into my data in a black box. That can take a week of doing PCAP captures. Then I've got to go back to my lab. And the first thing I do is start to break this information up to do analysis. So I start to think about how the business operates, because I can't look at 200 terabytes worth of data in one hit, right? I've got to break this up into small chunks and look for artifacts and do analysis. It could be 4 weeks before you're getting any sort of actionable intel on what's happening. What the tool sets here, so what we're giving to our customers is people, process, and technology. The same day, we've done the initial threat hunt dashboard tools. We've found some stuff. Now we want to run some more detailed PCAPs on the network to look for any other post-breach or evidence of intrusion. We can start running these PCAPs in increments as we feel like, and this is automatically sent to our SOC as a higher level of assurance, essentially. So these tools are all around about driving efficiency. And if I talk to my customers and say, right, well, if you think about this as on demand, we deal with this like support tickets for our customers. We're here to help catch the 1 out of 100 breach. So if you think of Cadbury, when they got hacked back a couple of years ago, you know, that 1 out of 100 breach cost them $140 million. Now, if you're spending a few $5,000 worth a year on us detecting or ruling out false positives once a month with us, say one time a year, spending $500 with us to do a false positive rule out on top of things. That $5,000 a year or $50,000 over 10 years is a very cost-effective way to get a very high level of assurance to stop that $140 million breach. And what you need for that to happen, to deal with this in an efficient manner, is to have the tool sets in play that allows us immediately to be able to log in after an initial detection and actually rule out or rule in a breach or not. Because if you go back and have a look at all the major breaches over the last decade, nearly every single one of them had an indicator that was either ignored or missed. And what we're saying to the industry here is, let's not ignore or miss these. Let's detect all the things. And we'll talk about later about what type of detection capability we have. But we not just want to detect all the things. We want to make sure we have a process in place that is efficient enough that it won't go through to the keeper. So if you're just using a retainer model and that whole engagement process is onerous, what are you going to do if you've got a 50-50 line ball call? Chances are you're not going to call the Ghostbusters, right? You're not going to call your IR team in because it triggers a big onerous process. So you're reluctant to deal with that indicator. What we're proposing here is human machine teaming, and that is collaboration between our SOC and forensic experts and your security teams or your IT teams, right? So that these type of events get looked at efficiently. We can close them out in a single day. And I can tell you the customers that when I ask them why they're with us, the ones that we have, tell us because they can sleep at night. And that's what we're proposing here, that ability to be efficient in TDIR, our ability to rule out these false positives. And if we rule out 99 of them and then catch the 1 in 10 years, that's the big one that you want to catch. And that's your security program at a mature level. And I'll sort of hand it back to Damien to continue on with the tool set.
Yep, thank you. Another reason you might want to run the vuln scan isn't just because you're trying to find exploits which might hint towards the initial compromise, but it might actually also find a backdoor into it once they've already gained control. They might set up a backdoor that the vuln scan can pick up. But you can also run container scans on this device, which generates an SBOM list, which allows us to dig into a bit more of what could be compromised as well. Another fantastic feature we do have is the Secure Web Gateway. As we know, most malware out there is not proxy aware. So it's really important to have a product that you can set proxy up on and that does have SSL inspection. So this allows us to allows the Crystalite to ingest encrypted traffic and actually analyze it for potential malicious activity, as 99% of the internet is now on an encrypted state as well. So it's really important to have these features. Also, since malware isn't proxy aware, much easier to pick up on an NDR system as opposed to all those EDR bypasses that are currently in use. And with the web filter as well, you can set up policies to say further protect the network and the environment. You can block based on categories, domains, hosts, file extensions. If you have a network, say you've got a subnet for just the accountants. The accountants shouldn't really be downloading anything except Word documents per se. So you can block file extensions such as executables, and so that really does also hamper, say the device is compromised, and they tried to download the second stage loader where you've downloaded the phishing email. That phishing email then tries to download an exe from an attacker-controlled server. It'll just get blocked. Even though they did click the link, the initial attack has been stopped. And that'll also make an alert. You can set all this up as well. But if you want to go a bit further into the actual endpoint protection, we do have we got Caesar, which is our pistol white attack surface reduction. Yeah. Sorry, yeah, I forgot what the C stood for. That's my bad. So if we go to the risk auditing, and then we go to the Windows Caesar, you can download this application on the endpoints and then push policies to all of them or just to some. You can really select. And these policies cover ISM controls as well. And the ISM controls do cover TTPs, which are as if you remember from what Adam covered earlier, those TTPs are one of the hardest things to pick up on. And we can block that through Caesar. We've seen a few ransomware in the past. For example, we've had APT28. It did a really interesting thing of gaining persistence through Word documents. And there's an ISM control for that, 41492. You can apply that right here by just ticking the boxes and assigning to the device. In this case, we've got it set up for the Windows workstation. The other controls you can put in place is Windows exploit protection, which is another ISM control, or probably the most common and most effective also, the scripting controls. You can block that through here as well as say other things that might not particularly be a TTP, such as USB autoloading, autoplay. You can block all of that without having to go individually going onto the device, blocking it, trying to find out how to do it. You just deploy the app, push the policy, and it all just works.
Thanks, Damien. I'll just jump in there and also talk about our DFIR app as well, which we're not showing today. But in the event of one of the other tools we have for our customers here is endpoint DFIR applications, where we can also do endpoint discovery and forensics, which taps back into this environment at the same time. Do you want to just go through and show some of our, I suppose, our intrusion detection and protection capability? You know, we often pitch ourselves as being best in class, and it is true. We are totally best in class here for the class of product that you're talking about. You know, most comparative products on the market at that have a rule set here, and we do detection through rules, both YARA, IDPS, heuristics, machine learning. It's a defense strategy, integrated intelligence as well for detection. But you'll notice there we're running around 70,000+ rules at any one time, and they're managed by our SOC team. This is a best in class in the industry. Most comparative products here run about 2,000 to 8,000. So you're looking at up to 10 times more visibility in your network environment than what you'll get from a similar class of product. And that's really important, right? That's really important, because if you are going to detect, lateral movement and pivoting and cobalt strike, you need this stuff updated, and you need this stuff being backed by a professional threat hunting team. And you need this deployed. You need the ability, as Damien said, to also deploy good proxy and SSL inspection, deep packet inspection. We also detect up to 3,200 protocols out of the box, with custom protocols being able to be added through the GUI as well. So if you've got custom OT environments, you have the ability to actually build custom passes right there in the interface, which is really important. That also allows us to run things like our passive encryption and control, where you can run actual isolation and containment with agentless on OT devices themselves. And that uses an encryption detection, a patented encryption detection mechanism, which essentially allows you to run 623433, so control conduits into the zone, clean zone, and then actually manage this. So that situation where the bypass happened by a camera, or that famous casino that got hacked through its thermometer in a fish tank many years ago, allows you to even give outside access to a third party to this clean zone and still be managed by your infrastructure team, but also maintain good detection. So once something happens in that zone or conduit, whether it be malware or even just a change of state, if your policy is good, you have an automatic detection capability at that point. And that's a really great thing to do, because while you're automatically protected from the segmentation side of things, you also still have the detection to be able to respond and snuff out this potential risk immediately.
Yep. And one thing that you might have noticed is you can create multiple profiles for the IDPS, as well as select the zones. You can actually have multiple profiles running on different zones as well. So you've got the
Correct.
server subnet, you can have a more secure rule set on that, as opposed to the rest of the office,
The
to really
first
just
product,
give you
I
that
believe,
option.
in this class to have multi-tenanted IDPS as well. No other product has this. So, and that gives us full zone-based networking capabilities. Like Damien said, ability to set up these zones for specific needs, but also run things like WAF type rule sets or and other things there.
Yep. So let's go back to the threat hunt dashboard and try to see if we can potentially find the initial attack vector. So if we go back to the threat hunt dashboard, which we showed off earlier, let's go, since it probably didn't happen in the last 24 hours, could have happened for more. Let's try the last 3 days, see if we can see a bit more. So we've got the blocked web requests. So you can see there's a bit here. The blocked web request could relate to, say, the Laravel detection as well. So if we go down a bit, here I could just spot in my eye, I can see a Mimikatz detection. It looks to be the Windows workstation pulled this from the Linux machine. So this could hint in the, and as we could see, we can see drop of Mimikatz as well. So this could hint that the Windows machine is also potentially compromised as well, and they're trying to copy a Mimikatz tool to it, which will then allow them to dump more data from that system and potentially compromise more of the network as well. And all of this can be escalated to the SOC team as well. So again, you don't have to be the expert. You don't need to know how. You just need to know that you can escalate this to the experts for further investigation. And as Adam spoke about earlier, we can start the whole IR process much quicker due to everything being integrated as well. And then another thing you can do, so we've shown off, say, some policy control. You can actually do protocol filtering as well as part of the secure gateway, as well as the application filter. So you've got all these new protocols such as Quick coming out. Most networks don't use them, so you can just go and actually block them as well. Or you've got you're not using RDP within your network or SMBv1, you can block those down. Just add more security for things you don't use. So in case of compromise, ransomware uses it. For instance, we've had quite a while ago now, we've had the WannaCry, which is propagated through SMBv1. So if you block that protocol, it wouldn't be able to propagate. Only the one system will be compromised. So it really does give you a lot of options to really go in depth on the defense as well. Is there any? We've got Pika as well, which is the passive encryption control, which is really for the IoT devices. You can set up a baseline of network traffic, save that, and then once that's activated, if it picks up anything out of the ordinary, you can alert, you can block for even more defense that way without needing to know what the IoT device is doing. Was there anything else in particular?
We'll just talk about a little bit about the integration with Office 365 and Defender into native integration as well, and really important. A lot of customers are using the integration with Office 365. I'm not sure if I've got any data in there for this lab that's set up.
Check.
But we have direct integration, obviously, with Office 365 and Defender. So that allows you to push policies, do backups. Once you've done your policy setup in Windows, of course, in Office 365 in the Azure tenancy, or in Defender, you're able to do DLP. And this is also correlatable within the threat hunt dashboard. So with those policies, we're able to then link data across between network, endpoint, and cloud. And it also, it's a great way to save money, I guess, from the Sentinel storage costs in using this as a SIM, but also then sending back to our SOC, like I said, for extended log storage for forensics. And as you'll see there from the top tabs, you have the ability to track in on SharePoint, OneDrive activity. We're also writing up some policy for a customer at the moment for protections in things like guardrails for Copilot as well. So you're available to even look at how that can be managed to essentially get some extra detection around, policy breaches and misuse in your Office 365 environment as well. What else we got there, Damien?
We've got the 18-month log retention.
Yeah,
out of
right.
the box.
Yeah, out of the box, and you can also deploy and look. We're going through a good time. We're running a bit out of time here. We try and keep these down to about 40 minutes. But anything else there, George, you want Damien to run through?
No, I might, due to the time, I might run into some questions. We've got a few questions that have come in.
Yeah. Well,
do you
slide deck, I guess, at that point.
Yeah, I'm going to paraphrase just to speed the questions up. You might do them off the top of your head, Adam. How does a crystal eye deliver true cross-correlation and response from a single panel without relying on bolt-on integration when considering endpoint and cloud combined?
Well, a little bit how we showed you with that integration with Office 365. We have our own endpoints as well, but we're also able to ingest any endpoint into our SOC environment from our customer base. We do that for the MDR customers, but you also have that native integration with Office 365 environments and Defender. So you really do now get detection and response across that endpoint, cloud, and network for the first time. And like we said, depending on how you establish your network environment, which we help customers with as well, building out a zero trust environment. So it's no longer an architectural aspiration; it is a reality. But also it allows us to attach things like more enrichment in the asset management and the assets being users as well, but also the data assets, as Damien said, the SBOM. We're able to get SBOM or software bill of materials and do application whitelisting on Windows, but we're also able to do SBOM in container and Linux servers and things like that. So we're enriching this all the time. Crystal Eye already has that asset management.
Just for mere mortals like me who are in sales, SBOM is software bill of materials.
Software bill of materials, that's right. Yeah.
So you're accumulating all that information into your CMDB, right?
Yep, that's exactly right. And we're working out more ways for customers to be able to manage those assets right now as we speak and work with our customers. Yeah.
Perfect. Thanks. I hope that answers that. Ingrid, we scroll down to Cal. How does Crystal Eye detect advanced persistent threats through NDR and TDIR integration? Because EDR fails to detect cobalt strikes. I think you covered that a little bit, but how does that integration work?
Cover that. If we go back to that period of pain, we really do look at a defense in depth detection and protection mechanism. We work with our customers to define strong policy and segmentation first. That increases your detection efficacy first. Like I said, things like the passive encryption control of DAS and clean zones. But yes, we do have best-in-class NDR, and the NDR is aimed to pick up that second and third stage as well, right? So while you can protect and detect at first stage, and this really, it doesn't matter if we're using advanced tools like Cobalt Strike or any other framework that comes in the future. The idea is to make this so painful for an attacker by having a defense in depth. They used to get it called, the old Swiss cheese model a few years ago. People love that analogy, where there's different holes to get through. And the more slices you've got, the harder it is to get through, right? So it's the same approach with Red Piranha and Crystal Eye, where we're again, that integrated threat intelligence is another important piece of the puzzle, because you're getting contextualization throughout those information spots, and the ability to really hone in that threat hunt dashboard that we said, that's often used by our own IR teams with our customers, and that gives our IR teams that immediate efficiency, like I said, to be able to snuff out initial indicators of compromise early before they become, large breaches essentially. And it still, I suppose, irks me a little bit that even if you go back the last 18 months, how many breaches all had massive exfiltration? Why are your why are our programs in the industry not being able to detect massive exfiltration? What you're seeing here from a capability in this platform is the ability to detect exfiltration. And if you can contain that early, if you can detect the initial stage and then contain it early, you're going to stop that exfiltration happening, in its tracks, and essentially might even be able to watch it attempt to be happened without it leaving your organization, and that can be quite it's a lot more satisfying than detecting it on the dark web 3 weeks later.
Thanks, Adam. Thank you. Hope that answers that, Cal. Paul's asking or comparing us to other MDR vendors that you talked about context, triaging with context. How do we compare triaging with context based on your TDIR model?
Look, a lot of MDR, it varies greatly with your service. When you're looking for an MDR provider, you're talking about the service delivery side. All the technology we build is predominantly around making our MDR more efficient. So we start off with our own CSOC platform. For the first, Red Piranha has been in business 10 years now. For the first 5 years, we ran, third-party software while we were building our own. And then about 3 or 4 years, about 5 years ago, we started running it together. And about 3 years ago, we turned off all the third party. First of all, we've got integrated playbooks, and this makes us a lot more efficient. Second of all, we don't have all the licensing costs, so we can actually do a lot more for our customer because we're not having to outlay licensing costs. But it's also that plug and play. We're controlling. So we've taken the old create logs, stuff it into a platform model, and we've now got a plug and play model where we control the data at the collection point. We're in the control plane. So this is a lot different. We truly have a decentralized processing model. So if you think about AI, for example, a good example of that's where we're actually doing some machine learning at the sensor level, but also at the collection point down the stream. Also with the policy enforcement we're talking about enforcing policy all the way down to the hardware level, right, in our platform. So we're able to actually generate events with a lot more efficacy with this model. We also then have, because we're controlling how that data is being generated at the sensor level and the collection level, a lot more, I suppose, confidence. I mean, even with that asset data, we have a lot more confidence to be able to review and capture for what our customers do. And then, of course, having that defense in depth, being able to see endpoint, cloud, and network data all in the same platform. We focused a lot around the network second stage today. And that's because there are massive gaps in people's security programs around that. This, coupled with our work that we do in threat intelligence and threat hunting as a company, as an organization, really allows us to have unique visibility into those threats and detection.
Thanks, Adam. Another one talks about the Cyber Threat Alliance, but I'll just paraphrase and summarize. How does the Cyber Threat Alliance with Crystal Eye correlating help in cyber insurance premiums and Essential 8 alignment?
That's a mouthful. There's about 5 different things going on there. Look, Cyber Threat Alliance. Yeah, I mean, look, we were the first company to be invited and accepted into the Cyber Threat Alliance. We, we still to this day contribute probably 15 to 20% on some weeks upstream intel to that organisation. We built this OODA loop within our platform. So originally, we're able to share that internally within our group, but also externally with our partners, of course. And then through that consortium, this allows us to really stay on top of cyber threats that are happening around the world and make sure that our customers are updated across that pyramid of pain, multiple times a day continuously. If I go back to proactive threat hunting, proactive threat hunting is really important. Like I said, if we can get away, even if you're not using it, and when we do threat hunting with our customers at a quarterly basis through the SOC process and MDR, but even if you're able to just focus in on that efficient 1 in 100 reactive threat hunt, like just reacting to events properly and having an efficient process to do a proper threat hunt on those false positives, you greatly reduce your risk for that 1 in 100 event. And that's what we're trying to do with our customers. One, we're trying to detect the things that other things fail to see. And two, we want a platform in play which allows us to rule out those 100 events over a period of time, which one will slip through to be the main breach. This greatly reduces your cyber premium, but where I suppose it really works with Essential 8, we have our GRC team as well, work with our customers on CTEM or cyber threat exposure management, which is actually on this slide here, which allows us to essentially work with customers to continually close gaps that are, from a risk-based approach.
Thanks, Adam. Question from Paul around OT customers. How does passive encryption control provide visibility and anomaly detection for encrypted IoT traffic without breaking encryption? And does this align to 62443? I think you mentioned 62443.
Yeah, 62443 is the IoT standard, and I'm a big fan of it, even for enterprise networks. To sum it up quietly or quickly, it is basically creating a clean zone for a specific set of devices, OT. You can use this in enterprise traffic as well for good segmentation, and then control conduits. So who needs to be in, it's pinholing essentially. Of course, due to our advanced sort of next generation firewall and zone-based traffic control, we're able to separate those OT environments. We're able to also lock down on those individual assets in that zone. And it's funny you mentioned encryption, because it actually uses encryption as one of the ways to fingerprint these devices specifically, so it doesn't break the encryption. We're not having to install certificates. It's passive. It's agentless. If any change of state happens to that device, it's able to isolate that, allow it to continue its operation if that's the policy you set, but it then also allows you to essentially investigate that device, again, passively, remotely, and without interrupting its operation, which is often the need for OT devices.
Okay. Ralph from the Philippines asked, with us moving towards quantum computing, I've been hearing it for 5 years, Ralph, are you thinking of integrating to post-quantum encryption PQC standards such as NIST-approved algorithms like Kyber or Dilithium? Hope I pronounced that okay.
Yeah, look, it's a pretty good question. Look, generally, PKI encryption is scalable for quantum computing. I mean, at the end of the day, and I know there's a lot of hype around this at the moment, but encryption is only as good as best known math, right? And then you have a bit of a performance of quote post-quantum handshake problem coming in there, right? So what that means is, we've got sort of things like WireGuard, for example, and even SSL VPNs. They use these kind of handshakes, and then of course you can scale those handshakes, kind of like what happened with SSL. WireGuards obviously can scale as well. It uses a lot smaller key size currently, but then of course you start running into your performance versus speed. But of course this is where quantum computing starts bringing in different speed that will be available. So look, this type of encryption problem is not really new. It is a big jump, obviously moving to quantum computers. But PKI generally is a scalable technology in its own right. So when we start seeing the same quantum computers generating better math for us to implement PKI, we'll also see improvements in the PKI encryption that's actually being used. Then we'll run into the problem of, and it's not unlike the problem with speed and performance over internet speed at the moment. Most people are moving to gigabit traffic speed on the end nodes. Have data centers, have our processing centers moved with that? No, they haven't. That's why we have a security problem at the moment, not scanning technology. So when it comes to things like VPNs, and which is a big important one, at rest, of course, you have a bit more control over the performance problem, but obviously in transit that becomes a little bit more. But PKI is generally scalable. So what we'll see in the industry, and Red Piranha is also tracking this and working with this. I mean, we have WireGuard in our platform now. We're one of the first to have that. We have direct integration with Entra on that as well. We will start to see these being brought in as well to be quantum proof or quantum encryption proof, I guess.
Okay. Next one from Cal, asking about the Cyber Threat Alliance feed and how do you adapt to that week by week? How do you integrate that into your evolving threats?
Yeah, it's all transparent, right? Our threat intelligence, like I said, we remove that pain point for our customers. It's not just about being members of the CTA. We don't generally need all the information from the CTA. That helps us see things that we're not seeing, but we generally see a lot ourselves, and we publish that threat intelligence each week as well, the raw data. So customers have a full transparent of what's being protected, what's new, the TTPs being used, where these are coming into our protection mechanisms. Obviously, there's a lot more happening than what's published, because otherwise the report would be 50 pages long each week. It's a summary of that data, but we're very transparent on that, and that's updated in our platform. But what I wanted to do is remove that threat intelligence problem, that integration into your protective and detective stack. And that's what we've done. And we call it automatic actionable intelligence. The Cyber Threat Alliance is just one of our exchanges that we share with, in consortiums. We're group as an invite-only group, but most of the large vendors are now in that. And it's an agreement that we have to share this information between ourselves as an industry to make sure that we're doing better for our customers as a group and an industry, which I think is a really positive thing. And I've been an outspoken, I suppose, advocate for that type of consortium over the last 15 years.
Okay. By the way, Ben's just attached a link to our weekly cyber threat assessment email. I would recommend everybody signs up to that. It's really good information about what's happened during the week. Paul, you sound a bit war weary, mate. Lots of cybersecurity vendors claim to offer MDR, XDR, but often use third-party tools, fragmented workflows. How does Piranha platform deliver true sovereign MDR capability?
Yeah, I mean, depending on what you mean. I can't remember where you're from, Paul, but if you're talking about Australia, yes, well, we're Australian-made, Australian certified, and everything's in Australia. But of course, rolling out on hardware for our customers as well as cloud. We have local cloud for the sovereign, no matter where you are. There was a map earlier in the presentation where we are there, and we're available cloud-wise. We're happy also, we're working with partners to roll out in more private clouds as well. We've worked on a platform with Intel for sovereign capability locally, no matter where you are, where you can build out private cloud with Crystal Eye and actually offer your own sovereign capability to end customers with a partnership with us. As far as the integration part go, yeah, well, we are fully integrated, and that's a unique position. We started this journey, over a decade ago, about building a more integrated platform for these things. Palo Alto's got.
We're not using Extra Hop or Call Light in the background.
No, we have the ability in our marketplace to start bringing in partner technologies, and that's something we're looking at now. One example of that at the moment, we're looking at bringing passwordless authentication into Crystal Eye through a third-party vendor. And so we've built the marketplace ready for that. But currently, it's all our technology. It's all fully integrated. What we'll do is be very, making sure that if we're bringing in third-party things to enhance or for our customers, that it'll be done in a way that's, beneficial for our customers at that point. But at the moment, it's all fully integrated, and there's no third-party tools or fragmented workflows, which makes it very efficient, as Damien showed you.
Okay, last one, I think. What about east-west traffic? Most MDR offerings struggle with this traffic visibility. Does this passive encryption control close the gap?
It's more about your architecture when we talk about east-west traffic, right? So depending on the sensor placement, you place your Crystal Eyes to deal with the, one in the deployment mode that you want to use, whether it be in a gateway or a TDIR inline mode, and essentially from there you can deal with east-west traffic. Yes, and that's what we've been demonstrating today. The ability to see east-west traffic is important. It's needed, and not just see a little bit of east-west traffic. You need detection fully on your east-west traffic, like we showed today. You need that ability to see pivoting, brute forcing, detect this at early stage, second stage, third stage, and then be able to track back and actually do an investigation quickly, so that you can stop that exfiltration, stop the loss and risk, essentially. So the reason why most MDR, I suppose, is because they're ingesting into just log ingestion. They're not in the control plane. As Damien said, we've got those extra benefits of being in the control plane, mean we can actually help with detection architecture, not just log analysis. You've got things like passive encryption control and DAS, a declarative authorization service, microservice management come out of that. There are benefits of that control plane. But the other massive benefit is really structuring your network, not just to detect, but protect and detect. you know, but then also be able to investigate as well, because we're in the control plane. And like I said, run packet capture, security packet capture processes, investigative processes live as we go, like support tickets. And this is really important for these, for dealing with the risks, I suppose, quickly.
Thanks, Adam. I might hand back. I don't think we have any more questions. I might hand back to Ben, who has some goodies that you might be able to download. Ben?
Yep, thanks very much, George. Okay, just as we're closing out, we've got that link where you can subscribe to the weekly threat report. If you want to access more of our knowledge sprints and webinars, you can find us on YouTube at Red Piranha Sec. We've also got free on-demand training and certification. This can be found by going to our Orchestrate interface, which is found at store.redpiranha.net. So you just go there, create an account, and away you go. If you've got any inquiries about sales, you can reach out to George and the team by emailing sales@redpiranha.net. If you want to see some more events, actually we've got one coming up. So this one is all around DAS. So this is protecting microservices, APIs, and container environments. Just go to redpiranha.net/events to register. And of course, if you want to join our forum and ask questions, share some information, feel free to jump on by going to forum.redpiranha.net. Now we've covered our questions. So this brings us to the end of this knowledge sprint, unless we've got anything else we want to share before we close out. Anyone? No?
Thank you all for coming along today. We see a lot of people stayed on to the end. Great turnout today as well. It's Jamie's just saying placement is key. Yep, that's right. Placement is key.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Jamie. And thank you everyone for coming along today. This will be made online and available for the people who couldn't attend today as well. So great. Thank you, George. Thank you, Damien, for your work. Friend.
Please reach out to the handout section in this demo and download any information you'd like. There's some cool brochures to have a look at. Thank you for attending.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone, for taking the time to join us. And from everyone here at Red Piranha, stay safe, and we'll see you all next time.
Have a great day. Thanks, everyone.